Hey team. So today I really want to take a quick look at a mistake that probably most of you and the rest of the Victorian state also make. So sit back for the next few minutes, follow along, maybe take some notes, but we're going to work through a previous exam question and the common error that we see associated with it. You might not be familiar with the NHT Biology exam, but it is essentially just the same as VCE Biology, but on a slightly different timetable. So if we scroll down here, the particular question that I want to look at today that I think is particularly pertinent and useful to what we're doing at the moment is question 8. So question 8 is just here. All right. What I want to look at here is the key features of an explain question. And then also this next question here has a little bit of a trick that might trip some people up. Now, let's have a quick look. So, many cancer cells have high amounts of the protein programmed death ligand PD-L1. The presence of high amounts of PD-L1 prevents immune cells from detecting cancer cells. Monoclonal antibody therapy against PD-L1 can be used to treat certain cancers. Not a lot of information there that's particularly useful to us. It is maybe nice to know that on the outside of cancer cells there's this certain protein, and we're going to relate to that in the first question here. Explain how mAbs could work to treat cancers that have high membrane levels of PD-L1. The first thing here that I would like to point out that I think is particularly important is the command term. So explain how mAbs could work to treat cancers that have high membrane levels. Now, it's really important that for an explain question that we're having a relationship, okay, how it could treat cancers. Right? It's really important that we're going to come back to that point at the end. So the first point here is hopefully we're aware that antibodies are really specific. So we want to probably mention here something about create mAbs, monoclonal antibodies with specific variable region, so the binding site, and it's going to be nice to use words like complementary, close enough, with specific variable region complementary to the PD-L1 protein. Create mAbs with specific variable region complementary to. That's our first step. You've got to make them. Okay, and they've got to be specific to your specific antigen, which in this case is the protein program death ligand 1. Great. Once you've made that, what can antibodies do? And that's what we're thinking. How do the mAbs actually work? Okay, we might mention something about agglutination. We might mention opsonization. Right, we could mention a number of things. These are just two options, right? We could even go and talk about complement cascade or a complement proteins or something like that. So there's some options here, but you want to talk about one of the functions of antibodies, generally speaking. The final point here, which is probably where some marks could be lost, is we're not going to, or we haven't yet related it to how that's actually going to treat cancer. So by doing agglutination or opsonization or a complement protein cascade, that is going to allow us to destroy or remove cancer cells or cells displaying the PD-L1 protein. Yeah, it's really important here that we get to that last point about how it actually relates to the treatment. Really important that we come back to this point, how it actually treats cancer. Let's get into this next question here, which is again about mAbs. Some mAbs called antibody drug conjugates are mAbs linked to a chemotherapy drug. We might be familiar with chemotherapy, we might not be, but traditional chemotherapy often affects all dividing cells in the body. What would be the advantage of using antibody drug conjugate mAb treatment? All dividing cells, so these are things like your digestive system, your hair. And very often why you may know someone who's going through chemotherapy, they might lose their hair, they might have digestive issues, things of that nature, because chemotherapy is very broad and it can essentially destroy any cells. It's not differentiating between a rapidly dividing cancer cell or a rapidly dividing hair cell. Okay. So, what would be the advantage of using antibody drug conjugate mAb treatment? So, this is essentially chucking some chemotherapy drug on an antibody. And as we mentioned above, right? Probably should have put a bit more of a space there. Are specific to, we can just write cancer antigens. Maybe we want to mention PD-L1. It's probably not necessary for this question, but they're specific to cancer antigens, okay? Or particular cancer antigens, like the PD-L1 protein. That's great. We haven't actually said what the advantage is yet. We've just said something about mAbs, okay? And so they're specific. We kind of said that earlier. That would still be 1 mark. But what's the advantage of that, right? We're making a bit of a comparison here without that compare command term. But the advantage would be that, well, you're not going to lose your hair, you're not going to have digestive issues, you're not going to destroy dividing cells. So maybe the advantage is less side effects. But it's really important that we actually are responding to the question, right, which is here. What would be the advantage of using mAb treatment? We can go and check the assessment report for this and see if I got 5 marks. I'm quietly confident that I would have here because I've responded directly to the question. I've seen the explain command term. I've given a relationship. Okay, and down here, I've actually said what the advantage is. Hopefully you followed along. Maybe you even learned something. Give these questions a go. Check in. Come back for more.